All right, good evening, everyone. It may seem a little bit strange to be using a microphone in a big space like this with just a few people here, but what we're doing tonight is actually having a live stream that's happening in the back, so thanks to our technology director, Shane O'Hara, for creating that. And this live stream will also become an active link, and it'll be a recorded video that we can send out to the community after this for folks who need to watch this. So welcome to those here in attendance and those that are online. My name is Ty Thurlow. I'm the principal here at Massabesic High School. Joining us tonight, Mr. Furzlevich and Mr. Lavirtue, our two assistant principals, and also our Dean of Academics, Mrs. Ellis, is with us as well to field any questions or concerns that you may have about certain aspects of school operation. So the purpose of tonight's forum is to go over two major shifts that are occurring for the 25-26 school year. And these are shifts that not only will be new this year, but they'll be moving forward into the future as we have subsequent school years as well. The goal of this evening is not only to discuss a little bit about these changes in depth, but also offer you an opportunity to ask questions, maybe look for clarification, or even provide some feedback if you have concerns about some of the things that are being proposed moving forward. I will note that both of these changes, the 0 to 100%, 0 to 100 percentage-based grading system and cell phone policies, have been in the works for several months over the course of this past school year with various community stakeholders. That's starting with student groups, moving into staffing groups, looking at policy committees, that's at the board level, and then finally at the RSU 57 school district full board level. We're happy to have one of our board members and parents here tonight. I won't name the individual, but thank you for coming. So it's been a process that's gone through various iterations, lots of feedback from various stakeholders to ensure that we're providing the best service to our students in our community, but also the best support so that moving forward from Massabesic High School, our students are going to be as successful as possible in that world out there. So we're going to start with the percentage-based grading system. A little background to this. In 2014-2015, the entire state took a strong look at proficiency-based education. With PBE, proficiency-based education, came along a different grading system, the 1 through 4 system. It really focused on looking at standards and standard development and indicating to students and families where students were in that progression of emerging to developing to proficient all the way to exceeding that proficiency. So with proficiency-based education comes along a different type of grading. We found over the last several years that proficiency-based education gave us some wonderful academic components. Specific to those academic components are our commitment to standards, so ensuring that our students have a strong understanding of different academic skills when they leave the high school. The same is taught at the middle school as well. We're keeping that strong academic component. We're still looking at national standards to ensure that our students are on par with students at their grade level and their age level. And when you're graduating high school, you have a commensurate or complementary education compared to your counterparts across the nation. So that piece is still with us. Where we found we were lacking a little bit is our ability to communicate to students and families exactly where along that trajectory you were in terms of grading. I'm a product of a 0 to 100% grading system. I think most of the adults in this room and most of the adults who are watching online are also a product of that 0 to 100 grading system. It's something we understand. It's something that we lived inherently through our middle school and high school years. For our students, it's going to offer more tools for them in the classroom to understand exactly where they are. So the difference would be understanding where you are at, say, a 3, which I'm going to call on Walker for just a moment. Walker understands what a 3 is. He understands what a 4 is. He's going to be a senior. He's also our student representative to the board. So Walker, thanks for coming tonight. But we want to be able to give Walker an even better indication of how far along between a 3, which is proficient, and a 4, which is really distinguished. We want to help him understand how close he is to that 4 or to that 3. A 0 to 100% base grading system gives us more of those small increments. So, that being said, we're going to be looking at a grading system that gives us the opportunity to indicate on a number of different documents, specifically the grade book and also your transcript, not only A, B, C, D, and unfortunately F, and I hope that no one goes to that particular place, but it's going to allow us in the classroom, a teacher, to tell you where you are 92, 93, 94% of the way, or maybe approaching 100%. Or perhaps you're somewhere in the low 60s and you're wanting to get to that passing level. A teacher can indicate to you exactly where in an assignment or an assessment that you are faltering a little bit, where you need a little bit of extra work and time, and you can get to that level of passing and above. So specifically with this, we've also developed some accountability. One of the big pieces of feedback that we received through all of our conversations from parents and students alike, they were looking for students to have opportunities to understand what accountability looks, feels, and sounds like. So accountability is a big fancy word for taking responsibility for your own learning and being responsible for your own achievement and success. So to do that, we have implemented some new deadline procedures that will take place here at Massabesic High School. First and foremost, those deadline procedures will be applied to assignments and communicated through individual classes. So your teachers will provide to you a syllabus at the beginning of each course. Some of your courses are year-long, some of them are semester-long. But they'll provide that syllabus, and in that information, they will indicate to you which assignments, at what point throughout the semester or throughout the school year, will have deadlines. There will be some that will have hard and fast deadlines. There will be some that there may be more flexibility. For instance, an assessment may have a very strong, hard, and fast deadline because students need to take that assessment, perform, achieve, and then move on to the next unit. But a project could have perhaps a more flexible deadline because a project is more involved. There are more steps that may take place, and it's important that teachers are providing you that flexibility. If you are missing assignments, or if you've decided to not even attempt an assignment, which is unfortunate, but it does happen, teachers will have the option to implement a post-deadline time period of 5 days, at which point, for those missing assignments, they'll determine if an assignment carries the possibility of that makeup time period of 5 school days, or if it does not. Again, an assessment may not carry a 5 post-deadline time period. The assessment is due, we need to finish the assessment, we're moving on to the next unit. So teachers will have that discretion. Their responsibility, again to use that word, is to communicate that to you early and often. They'll communicate through Synergy, they'll communicate in the classroom, they'll communicate through Google Classroom as well. And any assignment that they're handing out will have the indication of whether or not an assignment has a deadline. This is probably the most important piece of this particular procedure. There are penalties for missing those deadlines. So if you have an assignment that is due and you miss the deadline and the teacher says there is 5 days past this particular school days, mind you, 5 school days past this deadline where I will still accept that work, that's a good thing for you. It allows you a little bit of an opportunity to make sure that you can do that work. However, there are penalties that come along with that. For each day that you are late beyond that post-deadline time period, 10 points may be deducted off the final grade. So for example, you have an assignment that's due on a Wednesday. You don't do it. The teacher offers you a 5-day post-deadline period. You pass that in on Friday, you automatically are losing 20 points on that particular assignment. Your greatest possible grade you could get on that assignment now is an 80. That's if you've done everything correctly, up to the teacher's standards, and based on the different rubrics that are provided to you. So it's very important when we think of accountability and responsibility, we're not only staying up with our assignments, but we're making sure that if we do miss an assignment for some reason, we're communicating with the teacher's communicating with us, communicating with home, making a plan to get that assignment. We're going to shift into the second major change for this evening and for this school year. So cell phones and personal electronic devices. We've been calling these in our administrative team meetings PEDs, so cell phones and PEDs, not to be confused with performance-enhancing drugs, which was a big thing in the 90s and early 2000s in baseball. but personal electronic devices could be a number of different things. It could be a tablet, could be an iPod if you actually remember what those are. They're kind of now iPhones that do everything, but students still do bring some iPods every once in a while to school. Smartwatches, we have AirBuds and EarPods. We even have glasses that are made by Google and Apple that can do a number of different things while you're simply wearing your spectacles. So cell phones and personal electronic devices cover all manner of things that could be distracting for students, staff, and community members as they visit the building. So I'm not going to read through this, but this is included in the slides, not only that you have in your hands for those that are here. We're going to share these slides out as well in the upcoming student newsletter. But this is policy JFCK. This is the RSU 57 school board policy that governs what we do with cell phones and personal electronic devices in the school. The most important piece of this is really looking at the first paragraph where in the very last part of the line, these devices may not be used in any manner which disrupts the instructional process or violates school board policies or school rules. And then letter A, students are prohibited from using privately owned electronic devices, included but not limited to this very long list of things that are there. So this applies to during the school day, at school, or during school activities. I'll define what during school activities means in just a moment, because there are things that are technically school activities that are not happening during what we would call the academic day. And this policy does not have to apply to those school activities. I'll give you a prime example. Friday nights are football nights here in RSU 57. I'm not going to be standing at the stadium checking students to ensure that they don't have their cell phone. That is not only a school activity, that's a community activity. We have a couple of thousand people that come out for those events, and it's a lot of fun, and we're not there to govern what you do outside of the school day. So this is the policy. There are some specific, again, identities and identifications of different personal electronic devices. If you have questions about what that might mean, the simple explanation is students should come to school with their Chromebook that is provided by RSU 57, and that should be the only electronic device that students have in their possession, perhaps in addition to a calculator. But math teachers and science teachers are going to provide those in the classroom as well. So those aren't necessarily required for classes. Excuse me. So I wanted to go over just a little bit of data that we've been consulting as we've been thinking about this policy, again, for the last 5 or 6 months, discussing this policy at policy committee meetings as well as the school level. And you have this in actually graphic form in your handout. So I just put it into a little bit of a narrative form. But in recent studies over the last 10 years, 97% of students who were surveyed used phones during the school day, primarily on social media, so communicating with friends, family, whatever the case may be. YouTube was the big hit, and then gaming. Online gaming is massively huge. 95% of teenagers are on social media of those who were surveyed. That's a huge number, 95% of teenagers. 72% of the high school teachers who were surveyed reported that cell phones are a major distraction in the classroom. My guess is the 28% who did not say that probably don't have a problem in their classroom with cell phones because they have a strict cell phone ban in their classroom already. So they wouldn't see cell phones as a distraction because they aren't allowed there. 50% of kids, this is a crazy stat to me, get 237 notifications per day coming across their screen, whether that's visually or whether that's a vibration, and in some cases it's a vibration, a ringtone, and visually they're getting 237 notifications. Some in this survey received 4,500 notifications in one day. Right, that's everything from someone liked your post, they shared your post, they commented on your post, they snapped you, you snapped them back, you texted them, they texted you back, emails from teachers, principals, so on and so forth, phone calls, spam emails from all of the different discounts you can get, 4,500 different notifications. And a quarter of those are occurring during the school day, so roughly 7:30 to 1:30 in the afternoon. So 25% of all notifications, even if you're down at the 237 mark, you're looking at something roughly 59 or 58 of those 237 notifications are happening while you're supposed to be focusing on the lessons and the instruction that's happening during the day. Students, I love this one, students not using their phones during class wrote down 63% more information than the people who were using their phones. So you're sitting in a classroom and you're getting 63% more instruction, more learning than your counterparts. Continuing on with some of the data, 3+ hours per day on social media for young people will double the risk of poor mental health, including experiencing symptoms of depression, anxiety. Mr. Levertu and Mr. Frislevich deal with a vast majority of the social drama and behavior that happens in the school. I get roped in as well at times when things get severe. They could tell you countless times where they're dealing with student behavior or student misconduct that is directly related to this 3+ hours a day on social media. It's very difficult to walk up to a student, to walk up to another a single day. So since 2010, so a decade and a half ago, reports have suggested there's a 134% increase in anxiety among teens and 106, increase in depression. Those are scary, scary numbers. Anxiety and depression are real things. They're silent impacts to students and adults alike, but we don't see the impacts. But the fact that students are willing to talk about this tells us there's something that's happening here. Again, if we go back up to the time that we're spending on social media, that may be a really great indicator. 41% of teens with the highest social media usage rate their overall mental health as poor or very poor. The more time that we're spending on these cell phones and personal electronic devices and not speaking to one another, we're really going down the wrong path. 1/3 of all teens surveyed in one study reported they've been exposed to pornography during the school day. So you have your cell phone on you, you have a number of different applications where people can communicate with you and share information, share files, share documents, share photos. And before you know it, there will be things that are inappropriate that are coming to you from another source. Deputy Matt Kummer is with us tonight. He's our school resource officer located here at the high school. Probably weekly, and I'm going to say probably because I don't have the stats in front of me, but I would say at least weekly, he is working with students and families to try and figure out what laws may or may not have been broken from students sharing inappropriate images with one another, which equates to child pornography being distributed amongst children. It's a real problem, something that he has taken very seriously to help educate families so students aren't finding themselves on the wrong side of the law. 46% of girls and 43% of boys in one study experienced a reduction of bullying after smartphone bans were enacted. When that opportunity, like I just explained in that example, to say something inappropriate to this gentleman without ever having to confront him, when that opportunity is taken away, a lot of this social media drama, a lot of the mean, nasty comments, a lot of the bullying does go away. These studies have shown, again, 46 and 43% of students who were surveyed in this research reported that they had a reduction of bullying. It just wasn't happening because, again, it's very hard to walk up to someone you don't know or even someone you know not very well. It's very hard to walk up to someone and say something inappropriate or nasty. It takes, like I said, either a lot of... With the new policy, we respect and understand that we're a community of 6 rural towns. That is not to be lost on anyone that has made these types of decisions and has received this feedback. Rural towns mean we are separated often the moment that students and families leave the front door every single morning. Moms and dads, grandfathers and grandmothers, aunts and uncles, parents, guardians head in one direction to work. Students either get dropped off at school, ride the bus, or they head in an opposite direction as they're going to their schools and families are headed to their vocations. That means that separations of families are happening every day. It's really oftentimes an exodus from our 6 communities, heading toward Biddeford, Saco, Portland, Portsmouth, because that's where a lot of our jobs are. So we understand that communication is key, especially after school. So we want to provide an opportunity for families that do feel that there is a need for their students to have their cell phones, their personal electronic devices after school, whether that's a student driving home, whether they're riding the bus, whether they have an after-school activity and are waiting to be picked up later in the afternoon or evening from their parents. So these are the 3 options. These are the only 3 options that we're endorsing. My number 1 option, because this will make things vastly easier for all families, I promise you this, vastly easier for families and for the school. If you do not need your phone after school, you should absolutely leave it at home. Absolutely. This I endorse 1,000%. If you're not here for an after-school activity, if you don't need it for the 25 or 30-minute bus ride home, don't bring it to school. You will absolutely do yourselves a favor by removing any temptation, whatsoever to try and utilize your cell phone or your personal electronic device during the day. If for some reason you do need it after school or you feel like you can't park that far away from it, the second option is a good one if you have a vehicle. If you drive to campus, this might be for you. Power your phone down, leave it in your vehicle. If you have a friend who drives, maybe you could leave your phone in their vehicle and retrieve it after school. That is an option for you. Number 3, because we understand, especially with our grade 9 and grade 10 students who aren't driving at this point, number 2 may not be an option for you. And if you're a grade 9 or 10 student who doesn't drive and needs their phone after school for a number of different reasons, maybe you get a ride to go to work, maybe you are riding the bus home and you do have an hour bus ride home, and your parents, an IHP is an individual health plan, again, that may be needed because a student has a tracking device for their diabetes, or they may have a pacemaker. There may be something of that nature. We do have a few students who have those particular situations. They're working closely with Nurse Kayla Pasmani-Kinney to ensure that they understand you may have your cell phone on you for this purpose only. And unfortunately, if they were to break that policy and be utilizing their phone throughout the day, their phone would then be in the possession of Nurse Kayla in the nurse's office, so she could monitor their diabetes numbers or their pacemaker settings. So there are some exceptions, but they're few and far between. There are many students who live and die by music, right? We love it. It's just what we do. I understand that. In my own personal life, if I'm doing a task, absolutely, I'm putting some music on and listening to it. With your Chromebooks, they are set up to use wireless headphones. Students will have the option to utilize wired headphones when directed or allowed to do so by teachers in the classroom. When it's not appropriate for you to be using your wired headphones, teachers will make that very clear. I would assume that when class is starting and instruction is happening, directions are being given, the teacher is going to want your full attention. Perhaps when they set you off on an assignment or to work on a project or maybe work individually, they'll indicate to you that this could be the time that you could pop your headphones on. You will provide those wireless headphones for yourself if you want to do that as a parent, as a family. That's not a school responsibility. The policy does not indicate or allow for the school to provide any of that particular material. The following music streaming platforms are accessible via our Chromebooks. So you could use YouTube Music, Pandora, and iHeartRadio. Mr. O'Hara, our technology director, has confirmed that accessible through our network. They're safe, and we can track those uses on Chromebooks. So this could be an option for you depending on the teacher, depending on the class that you have. I'll give you a few examples. Wired headphones are absolutely not going to be allowed in our shops. That doesn't make sense. You're in a place where there's tons of machinery, tools, and materials going on. But I can absolutely see as you're working on an art project, let's say in Miss Levitt or Miss Christie's room, and you've received the instruction, you know what you need to do, you've gathered your materials, it's not a messy art project, and you could pop your headphones in if one of those teachers allows you to do so while you're working independently. This is a big question all over the state and all over the country. Parents ask, what do I need to do if I need to speak with my student or get a hold of them? Because in the past, it's been accessible, if you will, to text your student, and within maybe 5 to 20 minutes, they'll get back to you. Parents or guardians who need to contact their student during the school day or facilitate dismissal may do so by calling the main office. We have 3 administrative assistants. We have numerous phone lines, more than 3 in the main office. And so if you don't get through on the first call, try again. You'll get through very, very quickly. Contacting your child via their cell phone during the school day has distracted students. I've actually had students walk into me in the hallways. I wish I had actually pulled up some footage, because when I see students with their faces in their cell phones, I will specifically find their path and stand and wait for them to get about 3 inches from me before I say, hi, are you aware that you're about to walk into me? So it is distracting when students are on their cell phones. But they really need to be focused on the in-person interactions, not only with their teachers, but with one another. We know in this world that it is a responsibility of us as adults to ensure that our students can be successful when they leave these walls. Out there, it is required to have interpersonal conversations with other people. Whether it's a simple transaction at a grocery store, or you're speaking to a subordinate at your work, or maybe your supervisor or your boss, or you're trying to potentially make a sale, or maybe you're potentially trying to create a sale in your job. You need to be able to speak to people. I do worry right now that there have been some missed opportunities in the last 5 or 6 years when students have been so focused on their personal electronic devices. If the student needs to contact their parent or guardian because something changed, they got information, they had an email from coach, hey, practice is now moved back to 6 o'clock instead of 3 o'clock, we have phones available in the guidance office, in the main office. We can make phone calls for you. We can facilitate that. A simple request to a teacher, right, saying, Mr. So-and-so, I need to go to the main office. I just received an email either from my coach or whatever the case is. I heard on the announcements that something has changed in my after school. I need to connect with my parent. We'll facilitate that. We'll make sure that that happens. Emergency management is another huge piece to personal electronic devices that we're trying to ensure will not impact the safety and security of not only our campus, but all students, staff, and community members who may be on our campus during an emergency situation. There's a lot of information here, but what this really boils down to, during an emergency management event, if you will, there are communication pieces that are happening from the school to our emergency management personnel that are off campus and perhaps coming to campus. That's everything from EMTs, local police officers, firefighters, sometimes even federal jurisdiction folks are coming to assist with whatever is happening on a campus. When there are, and we'll use Massabesic numbers as an example, when there are 900 students on campus, if we were to be in a lockdown and 900 students had access to their cell phones, several different things can happen. Communication lines can actually be jammed. 900 people trying to get communication out from this campus could actually inhibit and impact our ability to communicate with the authorities about what's actually going on. Secondly, the rumor mill is rampant when there's an emergency situation. You've probably all received, if you're grade 9 students, you'll start to receive this, but if we ever have a hold in place on this campus, you may not know this, but the first thing that I do after we've made sure that everyone is safe is I'm at my computer putting a letter out to the community to ensure that they know the hold in place is happening for students' privacy, or maybe we had a medical event, or maybe there's something happening with some of our infrastructure, but I want to get that communication out to the community as soon as possible, because in years past, as soon as there's a lockdown, I can almost hear and feel 900 students do this, right? They grab that cell phone. It's almost one fell swoop, and they're texting and they're Snapchatting and they're doing all manner of communication, and they don't know what's going on. That's a scary concept to me, right? That's a scary concept. They don't know what's going on. They make conjecture, they make guesses, oftentimes very bad guesses, and before you know it, parents are calling and emailing. They're showing up at school, trying to find out what's going on. My kid said something's happening, when in fact, the people that have been hired to do the jobs of the school resource officer, administration, technology directors, we're managing the situation to ensure that everyone is safe, everyone is secure. So further communication that is wrong is a very dangerous thing in any emergency situations. Not having cell phones in those emergency situations will allow us to communicate and then act very quickly to ensure that the situation is mitigated, everything is neutralized, and we can get back to normal school operation. So this is just a rundown of what we've already covered. Dismissal begins at 1:45 p.m., so any cell phones and personal electronic devices that are stored in classrooms are going to be retrieved at this time. The first wave bus dismissal won't leave until 1:53, maybe 1:54. Ms. LaVirtue and I have actually walked from the very edge of campus to the very edge of campus on the opposite side, thinking if I had a fourth period class here, but my homeroom was over here, would I have time to walk from there to there and back to my bus? Plenty of time. I think we clocked it around 4.5 minutes. If you were in the science hallway, but you had one of the mods as your homeroom, you'd have still 3 minutes to spare before the buses actually rolled. So no worries there. After school activities, athletic competitions, school events, etc., are not necessarily subject to the cell phone PED prohibition unless use of these devices compromises safety or violates any RSU 57 policies. So we could be at a football game. A student could be there with their cell phone harassing or bullying another student, and at that point, your phone would be in violation of several RSU 57 policies, and you may not only have that cell phone taken from you, but you may be removed from the premises by our deputies or administration. Decisions to prohibit device use outside of the school day will be made by coaches, advisors, event coordinators, administration, if safety is compromised or if the device use is violating any RS-257 policies. So you can imagine that coaches are not going to allow you to have your cell phone during practice. But if you're in the game club, which meets on Monday afternoons, our 2 game club advisors may allow that to happen. And I can understand why, because gaming is part of that particular activity. And online gaming can occur on those cell phones. This is my final slide. Questions, comments, concerns, clarifications around the cell phone and personal electronic device policy. You guys have been an incredibly great audience. For those that are watching online, if you do have questions, comments, concerns, looking for clarification, please feel free to email me, reach out by phone. We're here all day, every day, all the way through the start of school. We want to make sure that people are well aware of not only the policy, but the impacts that this will have on students. Again, mostly in the positive. I understand that there's some trepidation and anxiety around not having that block, that brick that so many students sometimes are sort of married to. But we really do believe that we can have a successful school year with this particular policy, and that it'll be a healthier and happier environment because of that. So for those folks online, we're going to sign off. Thanks for joining, and for everyone here, I really appreciate you coming out tonight. We look forward to a good school year, so thank you again.